My nurse friend told me that she was taking this little child to die in the soiled utility room. I couldn't bear the thought of his dying alone, and so I cradled and rocked him for the 45 minutes that he lived. He was between 21 and 22 weeks old. He was about the size of my hand, and he didn't move very much because he was using all of his energy attempting to breathe. And I remember toward the end of his life, I couldn't tell if he was alive or not unless I held him up against the light to see if I could see his heart beating through his chest wall because their skin is so thin at that age. And he lived for 45 minutes. Nothing could have been done.
Hello
Hello.
and welcome to the Ann and Film Scoop. I'm Anne McElhenney,
And I'm Phelan McAleer.
and today we're going to start by looking back on our October 7th performance at UCLA and remembering, telling you the whole story, by the way. They're bringing you the whole story about how they tried to ban it, how they tried to disrupt it, and about the protests, but also some inspiring stories that we heard and that we didn't even know until at the performance. So we're going to bring all of that to you. And is Ireland, tell me about Ireland film.
It's,
What's the latest?
Well, remember we spoke to some people in the Jewish community there, and they said it's the most anti-Semitic country in Europe.
Turns out it is.
Turns out it is, and we'll bring you the accounts. And now the Democrats and the mainstream media, they've been killing themselves, boom boom, to tell you these late-term abortions where babies are born alive and then killed, they don't happen. Well, we have the receipts, we have the documents, we have the facts. Babies are being killed every day in America. They're being born alive and left to die by neglect, murdered every day in America. And we will prove it to you by the end of this program. So next
And
time
then
you...
after that, because we'll need some light relief after that, we're going to bring you we're going to survey the MacArthur Not So Genius Award recipients for this year. You really need to hang on to hear
Yes.
that because you couldn't really make it up,
Yep.
actually, if you were trying to parody it. I mean, it's actually, you know what? It's sad, film. It's sad. The Babylon Bee, they're trying to put them out of business here.
That's right.
It's very hard for them to compete with what's actually being pushed out in the news.
What's a genius today in America?
Yes.
So,
Anyway,
yeah.
UCLA, which was extraordinary, by the way. I mean, as I think I said it last week, but I say it again. My first impression when I went over there first was, to the college, was that the security was so over the top, so crazy. About 100 police and private security, 2 helicopters, a drone, 6 bomb sniffing dogs. It was so over the top. I thought I was going to start crying. I thought, oh my God, we're in UCLA, we're in Los Angeles, in the year of 2024, and we're just telling the truth, and this is what it gets met with.
Yeah. No. It's truly shocking. It was, and as you say, very, very sad. And it wasn't just the security that night. They've been trying to get this banned all along. They've been trying to get this disrupted. So yeah, we've talked to you before about Mike Dickerson, who goes by the Twitter handle My Dickerson, perhaps appropriately. He wrote to the organizers. He launched a Twitter campaign. I remember my favorite line from the letter he wrote to the organizers, which he also published, by the way. He also published that letter on Twitter, parts of it. My favorite line was, in short, and it was the world's longest letter. But anyway, we were terrible people.
The worst.
We believed...
The play is written, he put this out on Twitter, the play is written by a couple who make documentaries about why global warming is fake, fracking is good, and abortion is murder. Yeah, well, I'm at least he's accurate, by the way. Thank you very much. Hilarious and sad that my campus is hosting this nonsense. By the way, we weren't talking about any of those things in the play, by the way. He's unable to distinguish, people can have different opinions than himself, but he doesn't think anyone with an opinion that's different than his should be allowed to be on the campus at UCLA.
That's right.
And by the way, this could explain a lot of the idiocy that's going on campuses, not allowing any debate to happen.
I totally, I tried to say that to people at the event the other night. It's totally this attitude that puts people with certain opinions or with certain skin colors in the bad place, and certain people with certain opinions and certain skin colors in the good place. Identity politics that allows them then to look at Israelis and Jewish people and say bad people, because that's the binary world they live in. So,
and they have never been to Israel, so they don't realize that everyone in Israel isn't white, by the way. But anyway, that's another point.
So yeah, he said UCLA should not be honoring propagandist documentarians who fight against gender, racial, and environmental justice. What court is that
Environmental
No,
justice.
but gender, racial, environmental justice. What's the law? What's the what laws have we broken that we're no? I mean, justice is a legal thing. So
You'd have thought.
where's the court for that we're in fighting every day, and what laws are we breaking while gleefully mocking their targets? Actually, I will admit to being guilty there, my Dickerson. We have gleefully mocked you.
100% with
Yes.
glee, and we're all about glee over here.
Yes,
Yeah, it's all
yes.
about the joy, by the way.
Joy, it's
Lo-
Kamala style joy, isn't
all
it?
kinds of joy around here.
Isn't Kamala's campaign full of joy? Isn't that what they were trying?
It is absolutely unconscionable that academic departments are giving platform to an obvious liar. Excuse you.
By the
me.
way, there's not one word of us on that stage.
No, that's right. That's right.
So-
Not one word of us on that stage. That is
Yes,
absolutely right.
platform, because it's a verbatim play. So we're not being platformed. We're not being platformed. But have you actually, my Dickerson, have you actually detailed what our lies were?
Yeah, I'd love to hear the lies. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, we can't ask him those questions because his response has been to block us all on Twitter.
And he won't come on the podcast to talk to us.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
you know, we're quite civilized, and we could do it even. He could even do it over Riverside. He could even do it remotely, so he could feel protected, and he could be in his safe place
That's
with
right.
his teddy bear and all of his little things that would make him feel more comfortable and more. And he could have somebody maybe like a therapist there to kind of soothe him while you know, if he had to talk, like if he was asked a difficult question,
Because we care.
because that's the kind of us. Very caring and joyful. Don't
Joyful.
ever forget about joy.
Yes.
But not alone was there, my Dickerson. It wasn't on his own. There was an online campaign to get a mob together to disrupt the play from the inside and outside. The organisation was called Palestine Action SoCal, and they wanted to start a riot in the theatre.
Yes.
On a post announcing that our play would be at UCLA, they made threats in the comments section. Now, this is some of this. I'm going to try and do this without using bad language.
Now bleep it now.
I'll bleep it. I'm bleeping sick man. Those students should riot, cause
What the bleep?
what the bleep. There's too much audacity where it doesn't belong. Interesting.
Yes.
He just learned. He just learned the word audacity.
Okay,
See in
can I
class.
just
He
say
was all
something
excited
else?
about that.
Mike Dickerson talked about their unconscionable. I think if you ever see anyone talk about something being unconscionable, I would run
I'd
away.
say they went to college.
They ran away, and they went to college and they've bad opinions. Anyway, what else?
Oh yeah, there's more people from SoCal Palestinian Freedom or whatever. Oh yeah, sure. There's no way a student stage play about something less than a year old, onsetting ongoing events is going to be in poor taste.
Yeah, another one I like this one. It's so easy to flip this to them. Plan strategy before storming the place. But then in other comments also, they talked about buying tickets and going in as audience members and disrupting the play from within. So that's, by the way, this is a verbatim play. This is only people who survived through October 7th giving their accounts of that day. And so that's what they wanted to disrupt. Don't forget, they weren't disrupting us. They weren't disrupting our voices. They're disrupting the voices of women. A lot of women, women claiming that there were sexual assaults. Believe all women, except when they're Israeli or Jewish women.
And a lot of the voices, by the way, on stage, the voices of very young people, college age people
Yes, right.
who survived a massacre at a dance party. The very, very kind of people that are, that are populating the halls of UCLA. Those very, very kind of people are the people who were murdered and slaughtered.
Yes.
As somebody says in the play, as one of the people that we interviewed said, you can't kill people who are dancing, who have come for dancing.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. But yeah, there were demonstrations on the campus. I mean, the thing went off in the end without incident. But the presence, the heavy security presence would have made anything impossible. They had, there was those kind of crash barriers were all over the place. Really, kind of an extraordinary thing to see and very disturbing. I found it very disturbing, the heaviness of the situation. But like all things, there were these lovely miracles that happened. And at the end of the play,
Let's play the standing ovation there.
Yeah, we'll just show, people just loved the play. I thought it was extraordinary. And then there was a Q&A, and we were part of the Q&A, but I really wanted to focus on this one part, which was really amazing. Joshua Bitton, who plays Dennis, who is IDF soldier who was
Shot 5 times.
Yeah, and we actually interviewed him in hospital. There's a photograph of the actual Dennis in hospital with with Phelim and I. Just an incredible guy who all he wanted to do was get back into the fight, like after being shot 5 times. Amazing guy. But let's listen to the actor who played Dennis, Joshua Bitton, talking about what the experience meant to him.
I like literally woke up one morning to an email that said, "Hey Josh, would you be interested in this?" And my brother's out here somewhere, and we lost 3 family members on October 7th in Kibbutz Be'eri, and we had 2 others taken hostage. They were released in the second hostage release. So like I didn't know the weight of this until we were reading it, and it was really wild because when I read the play, but somehow like legitimately I skipped like 4 pages, and it's the 4 pages where Dor speaks about seeing Kibbutz Be'eri. And like there was just a thing that before knowing that, when I saw the email, I aggressively emailed her back and was like, I have to do this. You have to put me in touch with them. I have to do this. Because I think a lot of us in here, I think just Jews in general, like same experience in America. On October 8th, I was getting bombarded on social media by friends who I was like, hey, listen, I know you have points of view about this, but like we lost family members. And they would say, yeah, I'm so sorry, but. And I saw the but, and I was like, you. And my brother's kind of a warrior of a human. And he has told many of them to their face to and I'm sorry about the language, but there's so much anger. I've had a terrible week. The sound guy and I got into it. I only got to the guy in the parking lot. Like I've just been on edge since we started this, and I just am very, very thankful. You've been very nice to me. I just but it's been an honor to like, it feels like one of the only ways I felt like I could do anything.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. And he wasn't the only one. We also had the actress who played Shani, who had an interest. I mean, I didn't even know much of this until we actually went to the performance.
Her name is Adi Ben Ezra. She's Israeli.
Let's hear what she did before she became an actress.
I am Israeli, and I served in the military. I was a first lieutenant, special operations officer. So. For me, I felt like I can really resonate with her story and how she felt, and how, being here for me also was tough during all this time, seeing my friends fighting and all that stuff. It was tough, and knowing where I came from and what I did in the army. So I felt very connected to her story, and I feel honored to be here tonight and share her story. And doing this, I wouldn't choose to do anything else. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Anyway, the performance was extraordinary. We would really like to keep going. We would really like to bring this play everywhere. Everywhere it's been, and everyone who's seen it says the same thing. They say everyone should see this. And so this is what we're working really, really hard to achieve. We're trying to raise money. You can help with that. This is incredibly important that this is recorded, that it is remembered forever.
So please go to october7theplay.com.
Give what you can. Please.
So talking about, the world has changed a lot. I mean, no more so in our home country, but it's the same. I mean, whoever thought you would need security to put on a play in UCLA about Israel? But you do. It's the only play. It's the only group that needs security these days in Los Angeles. So we spoke to senior people in the Jewish community, and they said it's the worst place in Europe to be is Jewish. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of competition there in Europe.
Yeah.
And the Sunday Times Ireland ran an article, and they quoted Bar Clara Mendez McConnon. She's originally from the Upper Galilee region, but had lived in Dublin since on and off since 2012. She went back to Tel Aviv with her husband and 2 young children due to the discrimination they've received. For
So they
her,
went back. So yeah, I love that. Let's take a moment there. So they left Ireland
Yeah.
because it was so awful to go to Israel, where there is a war going on.
yes, because
That's what she
they
did
feel safer.
because they feel safer with their young children.
For me personally, it's been heartbreaking.
This is what she said.
Uh, uh, I was deep into my naturalization process of becoming Ireland, but the level of mistrust and isolation got to a point was unbearable. My eldest son, who is 7, got bullied at his GAA club, which is
That's
the
a
local
football.
sport, by his teammates, 7, and got bullied by his coach for being Israeli. His coach.
She goes on to say, we had families and friends of years that turned on us. I explained that I can only share the Israeli perspective because that's my life. My family is being evacuated from the north, and one of my childhood friends is one of the hostages that's still there in Gaza.
Yes, and this is
Oh
the
my God.
bit. This is actually the reason I wanted to read this
Yeah, this
article.
is really
to you.
worth hearing.
McConnon, who is on maternity leave after giving birth to her youngest son, said she had experienced discrimination whilst in a maternity hospital in Dublin. By the way, it's not discrimination. This is
That's the wrong word.
That's the journalist saying
Yeah, it's not
discrimination.
so here's what she said. The stress and anxiety ended up with me having a very high risk pregnancy with a lot of complications. And I was told I needed a C-section within 48 hours to bring the baby out a month early, she
Yes.
said. One of the doctors that came in for the consultation decided to completely and utterly smash into me with her political views. This was my doctor, and I was in a high-stress environment. I demanded that she be removed from the team, and I received an apology letter from the hospital. By the way, as you said, Phelan, when you first read this should be a front-page news story in Ireland. It should be the first news item on the news in Ireland.
Yes.
That somebody who was in high-risk, it was in a hospital, by the way, just generally, hospitals, you're not in there for anything that's not serious. That somebody was in a hospital, and that the doctor chose to at that moment to bring on some kind of free Palestine nonsense on this patient because she was Israeli.
I want to know, is that doctor still working in that
She
hospital?
shouldn't be allowed to work as a doctor ever again.
If the hospital apologized for that doctor,
That's acknowledging it's true.
yes. So why is that person still working there? Then you got Orly Degani. She moved
yes.
to Dublin with her husband and 2 children in 2018 from Haifa. She said many Israelis in Ireland are afraid to leave their homes.
She went on, and here's her quote. She said, some people have left Ireland to go back to Israel, but most who have left went to other countries in Europe with different views. In other words, a more, a more caring and kind environment, a more tolerant environment, by the way. It shouldn't even be a more tolerant environment. This is complete madness.
A lot of Jewish people have removed any symbol that might identify themselves as Jewish or Israeli. They don't want to be identified. A lot of people, including myself, at some point in the last year, rarely left the house or didn't leave the house by themselves.
And we're hearing this ourselves, by the way. I'm not going to identify anybody, but we've been getting correspondence from people who are Israeli or Jewish in the United States.
That's correct.
And who have a relationship, have a strong relationship with Ireland through marriage or whatever. And a number of them, it's more than one at this point. Like a number of them have written they don't want to go back to Ireland. They're feeling really horrible. I wrote to one the other day, somebody who recently got in touch with us, and I just wrote to her and said to her, because she's extremely upset. And I said to her, if it's any benefit to you, I want to tell you what my sister did last Christmas in Dublin, where she put up a Star of David and she put up a Star of David in Dublin. You thought it was the kind of Phelan was kind of like she probably shouldn't do that because who knows what could happen. But I wrote that to this Jewish woman, and she said it meant an awful lot to her, and she asked me to thank my sister for that. But, but not enough people are doing that actually.
Remember that when we were leaving Israel last November.
Oh yeah.
The woman we were checking, she was checking in. She was supposed to go to UCD, University College Dublin, to do a master's. She said she was not
I'm
going.
not going now, she said.
Yeah, and then that person we met earlier this week, who's married to an Israeli woman, and she will not. He's Irish, and she will not go to Israel. She will not go to Ireland.
To Ireland.
I mean, and I think they have children, and she can't go, and so the children have to go to meet their grandparents now. But she just can't go. I mean, put up that picture from the pub in Bundoran.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
look at this.
Where I'm from. So I'm from this small village, small town at the seaside. It's a tourist place, and this is what the local pub had up. And we just showed it to a Jewish friend of ours over the weekend, and he said, "Oh, you mean no Jews allowed?"
Yes.
Basically, that's what it translates as. And Degani, then this other woman that's mentioned in this
That's right.
story, this politician who ran this is again in Ireland, who ran as an independent candidate in the local elections in June in Dunleary. She was dropped from the ballot by the Social Democrats. She had been a Social Democrat in April, who felt her stance on the war in Gaza was no longer compatible with the parties.
Yes.
So that's Ireland for you, and it doesn't. And it's funny. You know, people have talked about Ireland, and as the days go past, the weeks go past, the months go past, it's getting worse.
It's getting worse,
not better.
Yeah,
it's getting worse, not better. And it's the various highest echelons of Irish society. But funny enough, they're not reflective of the population. They're really not reflective of the population. But you have this elite and idiotic minority who are dominating the conversation with anti-Semitism.
It's kind of funny. The more Israel wins, the more anti-Semitism comes in Ireland. You know.
Well, it's the oppressor oppressed. It's that oppressor oppressed thing, and in that dialectic, the Jews win because they work hard and they achieve a lot, and so everyone else is obviously being oppressed by them.
Yes, and I suppose what's that whole thing? You know, people really like dead Jews. You know,
Yeah,
you
the
don't
only
like,
kind of what is that not the book title? The best kind of Jews are the dead Jews. You know, I think somebody has a book title like that. It's just extraordinary, the whole situation.
Yeah, people support dead Jews. You know, they support victims of the Holocaust because they took it, and when they fight back, no, we don't like that. But anyway, let's move on to another cheery subject: late-term abortions and the killing of babies. And you and perhaps we talked about this earlier. You're not completely happy with using the word killing. I would say it is killing. Babies are born alive.
I understand the distinction. I just think the nuance of it is that what they do is that a baby born alive in an abortion, and it happens, and even if ABC News won't acknowledge that,
Yes.
babies born alive in abortions happen, more than you think. And what is done in most places where people live in America is that the baby is neglected to death. So instead of I have a problem with the word kill because they don't come along and stab it in the heart, but it's actually and actually this comes up in the Gosnell movie, that might be more humane.
That's right.
What they do instead is they neglect it to death. So they don't
So the
they don't
baby-
hydrate it,
Yeah.
they don't keep it warm, they don't do any of that. They just let it die, basically.
The
Let
baby
the
dies of
die.
dehydration, starvation, cold, whatever it is.
And we're going to have an amazing interview in a few minutes.
But we
on
did this great Twitter thread
which
on
we
it.
want you to go. And by the way, it's going really viral. By the way,
Yes.
I think it's at 1/3 of a million people. I think have tweeted it out so far. But we really want it to go far. So if you have a Twitter account, please go to Anne McElhenney
so
on
we'll
Twitter.
we'll
Hang on
get-
a minute, sorry. So if you have a Twitter account, please go to Anne McElhenney on Twitter and find that thread. We'll put the link up in the show notes, and please retweet and tweet it out.
and like it and all that.
And share.
So I'll just give you a flavor of the tweet, off the thread, and it was inspired by this presidential debate where ABC moderator Lindsay Davis said, "There's no state in this country where it's legal to kill a baby after it's born." And Kamala Harris repeated this in a recent Caller Daddy interview. It's not true, so we have all the details. There's even a name for it. They call it comfort care, and it's
Which is, by the way, typical of the abortion industry. Neglecting a baby to death is comfort care. Abortion is Planned Parenthood.
Can I just say, so neglecting a baby to death, that is killing a baby, because if I had a baby and I put it outside this room out in the cold for 2 days, that's neglecting the baby. That's killing. I would be charged with murder. So putting a baby in a broom closet or in a hospital theater and walking away from it and letting it die without medically trying to keep it alive, or giving it sustenance to keep it alive, that's murder. That's killing a baby. So they comfort care, they don't like to talk about comfort care, but interestingly, we came across this in the Gosnell case. Now, the Gosnell case was about him stabbing babies, but then the prosecution brought in a witness, Dr. Karen Fuselin, to say this is how good abortion's done. Unfortunately for her, she was asked under oath the difficult question, what happens if a baby is born alive? And she flimmed and flammed, and she said, well, basically, we would at least keep the baby warm, but allow it to die. Well, she didn't say it. This is me summarizing it. Allow it to die a lingering death of dehydration and neglect. She said the practice was called comfort care, and this is the actual court transcript. So
We're
it's
putting it up on the screen now.
let's read the court transcript. This is Ed Cameron, the prosecutor, asking these questions. I will do Ed Cameron. Now, Ed Cameron was a proper gentleman and a great prosecutor, actually. And this is him asking these questions, and I'll do the questions. You said it's never happened to you, but what is your obligation if the baby is in fact born alive?
It depends on the gestational age, but just, as a human being, you would want to at least comfort care. If it's in a hospital, you could potentially offer, like over 23 weeks to resuscitate it. But, really just keep it warm, it will eventually pass.
So there you go. So you just keep it warm, keep the baby warm, put it aside, and like everyone who's neglected and not given sustenance, eventually you will die.
And you'll hear more about that in the interview in a few minutes. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Will we play the clip from the Gosnell movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Janine Turner. We created this for Janine Turner for the Gosnell movie, Gosnell, the Trial of America's Biggest Serial Killer. And Nick Searcy is playing the lawyer in it, and Janine Turner of Northern Exposure is playing
Dr. Fuselian.
Dr. Fuselian. Let's play that now.
Have you ever had a live birth during an abortion attempt, doctor?
No, I have not. Because we listened to the sonogram to ensure that the fetal heart has stopped.
Well, what if you made a mistake?
We don't.
Well, what if you did?
Objection. Hypothetical, Your Honor.
Your Honor, she's a medical expert. I'd like to have her opinion.
Overruled. I'm going to allow the question, but stay on point, counselor.
What would you do if the baby was out and it was breathing?
We would issue comfort care.
Comfort care. Can you define that for us?
That's keeping the fetus warm and comfortable. Eventually, it will pass.
Eventually, it would pass. So basically, you'd let it die.
The great actresses, great actors, actually.
Yeah.
So, and don't forget, you may remember Ralph Northam, the former Virginia governor. He got into a lot of trouble for basically saying the same thing.
And he was a doctor,
Yes.
which gives it even more weight. So it wasn't like he was out of his depth, speaking out of turn. He knew exactly what he was talking about. And he was asked, he was on a radio show in 2019, and he was asked what would happen if a baby survived an abortion. And he said, and here's his quote, "The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired." And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
So
he basically said the quiet part out
it's
loud.
basically, I can take a baby, this is basically saying I can take a baby and put it out there and we can have a discussion about whether we want to keep it
What do we
alive.
do with them? What do we do with that baby that's out there crying and screaming and squealing and I don't know, squirming and cold?
So Northam said the quiet part out loud. A baby who survives an abortion, it will be left to die if the doctors, who are abortionists, and the family and the mother, who wants to have an abortion, don't want it to live. Very interesting. Planned Parenthood were one of the first organizations to demand Northam resign because he let their secret comfort care story slip.
Yes.
Um,
And by the way, some of these babies that they're talking about here are babies with, for example, with Down syndrome who would survive and thrive, by the way, and are living their best life. Plenty of them, including one that you ended up having a conversation with during
Yes.
the Gosnell case. It's a funny story, but basically, this is the kind of babies that, and by the way, and I have heard of stories. A friend of mine who has a baby that's Down syndrome, and I remember her reporting to me that she could see that the nurses treated the baby differently than her other children. She'd had 2 other children. But she also recounted to me, she's somebody who has lived in many, many countries, but I remember her recounting to me, talking to women in France, and that a friend of hers had a Down syndrome baby in France, and that the woman, when the baby was delivered, the doctors in the hospital in France said, we can just keep it, by the way. We can just put it in a room and I remember that, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
We could just put it in a room and it'll eventually die. And I've asked other people about that, and it's a thing. It's a thing that happens.
Wow.
And it's kind of the quiet part out loud. This happens, but nobody wants, the people who are protecting abortion certainly don't want to
But
put
Anne,
a light on it.
maybe Kamala
Kamala.
is confused, right? Maybe
Mm.
she just doesn't know this, right? But if only there was someone around her
Oh,
in her
like
inner
her-
circle
like-
who
like
could enlighten her,
Oh, like Tim Walz.
her VP candidate. Yeah, because
Because
Tim
he seems to know something about all
he knows
this.
because in Minnesota, where he is the governor, hospitals are obligated to report, and this is all in our Twitter thread at Anne McElhinney, are obligated to report when babies are born alive after abortions. So, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, between 2015 and 2022, they reported 24 live births from abortions. In 2021, there was 5, for example. Now, and we know from our personal experience that many babies born alive during abortions are not reported, and there's no penalties for not reporting it. So at least 24 died of that
But
period.
we're putting up, because I think it's really important to do this. We're putting up the screen grab from the Minnesota Department of Health. We're putting it up on the screen right now so you can read it. Because and again, please go back to the thread, because this is good information that should be shared with other people. And I'm going to read out what it says from the Minnesota Department of Health from the calendar year January the 1st, 2021 through December 31, 2021. 5 abortion procedures resulting in born alive infants reported. So that's how long is that? That's a year, right?
Yeah.
In one instance, fetal anomalies were reported resulting in death shortly after delivery. No measures were taken to preserve the life, were reported, and the infant did not survive. In 2 instances, so remember we're talking about how many altogether? 5. In 2 instances, comfort care measures were provided as planned and the infant did not survive. By the way, just to understand again, comfort care, no one survives comfort care. You don't survive comfort care,
Yeah.
by the way, just everyone to be clear about that. And in 2 instances, the infant was pre-viable, no measures taken to preserve life were reported, and the infant did not survive. So, even in their reporting, there's a lot of information being hidden here, because it's quite extraordinary. And we happen to know somebody who takes care of preemies, and it is amazing how young preemies can survive. Amazing now. I mean, the dates used to be 28 weeks. It's not anymore. It's way back down to, even in the case, I think there was one here in Los Angeles,
But-
21 weeks.
Yeah, but just in case that a baby might survive, or basically we're in a culture of death now, and
Yes.
killing babies by neglect just isn't enough. So the pro-abortion activists got lobbied, and Tim Walz signed off on a change to Minnesota's law quite recently by removing the requirement to preserve the infant's life, changing the language to care for. So it used to be you're obligated to preserve. Now you're only obligated to care. So hug,
Yeah.
put a blanket around, keep it warm. So that's comfort care. So let it die, murder it, kill it. By neglect. So Kamala, and the ABC fact checkers, please accept. And by the way, maybe you've got facts to challenge this, but just let's not let people away with this blanket statement that this does not exist. It does. We have the evidence. If you have evidence to challenge that, please produce it. But just a blanket statement that it doesn't exist is not good enough. The reason they don't want to admit comfort care exists is because they know that the vast majority of Americans would be opposed to the practice. Well, we
Yes.
hope they would. These are not fact checkers. These are fact concealers, and America deserves better. And with the intention of bringing you more facts, we're now going to go to an interview with Jill Stanek, who was one of the first people to reveal this practice in a hospital she worked in as a nurse back at the turn of the century. So let's go over to that interview we did earlier with Jill. We're joined now by Jill Stanek, who was a nurse who blew the whistle on Christ Hospital in Illinois after she witnessed babies being born alive after abortions who were left to die without medical intervention, who were killed in the operating room. We wanted to speak to her because, as we've said, the Democrats, the media, everyone is saying this doesn't happen. This never happens. This is some kind of myth. As we showed in our tweet there, it does happen. We have the receipts. We have the documents, we have the evidence, but now we wanted to speak to someone who was in the room, someone who's seen it happen firsthand. Jill is a nurse. As I said, she testified in 1999 that babies who survived induced abortions were left to die in a utility room. And President George W. Bush personally thanked her when he signed the Born Alive Infants Protection Act in 2002. Since then, she's worked in pro life advocacy. So, Jill, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your work.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Especially with Gosnell. That was awesome.
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you so much. So you were a nurse back in 1999 in a suburb in Chicago. I want to start with that. Can you tell us, what did you see? What happened? What happened to you then?
And what kind of nurse were you at the time?
I was a nurse in labor and delivery, and I'd worked in the department for over a year without knowing that abortions were going on around me. The type of abortion that Christ Hospital used and still uses is induced labor abortion, which is a method they use misoprostol or cytotec to irritate the cervix and deliver a baby that they expect will die during the process or soon afterward. The babies that they aborted were second trimester, early third trimester, as late as 28 weeks.
Yeah. So our understanding from Gosnell is that for those types of abortions, the baby is injected with a poison into the heart and is killed. Was that what was happening? It's supposed to be killed in womb and then delivered. Is that the kind of abortions you were talking about?
No, at Christ Hospital, they didn't kill the baby beforehand. They just oftentimes these babies were learned to be handicapped during their second trimester ultrasound, and they were determined to have something like Down syndrome or anencephaly, no brain. Although there were times that these abortions were committed for life or health of the mother, and so these babies were sometimes aborted alive.
When we studied Gosnell, they injected the heart to stop the heart beating, and the babies were born dead. Is that what Chicago did? Is that what you witnessed?
No, my experience is that a lot of times hospitals don't kill the babies beforehand. They just induce labor after it has been determined that oftentimes that a baby is handicapped with anencephaly or Down syndrome. And they just insert a medication, misoprostol, also known as Cytotec, into the mom's cervix, which dilates the cervix and causes it to open early. And so, what is expected, because these babies aren't killed beforehand, is that they will die during the birth process or soon afterward.
Sorry, I don't understand. Why wouldn't they do the injection? Is that not standard practice to inject into the heart?
They don't consider themselves abortionists. They're just trying to do something to help a mom, so they think, which is pseudo help. But so to kill the babies beforehand would really make them into something that they don't want to be. So when they just induce labor, the death certificate says extreme prematurity is the cause of death,
Hmm.
and so that is their way of not having to admit even to themselves that they're committing abortions.
So just to be really clear, though, the mothers of these babies in these cases that you're describing, did they go to the hospital for an abortion, or did they go to the hospital to deliver a baby and then discovered that there was some kind of fetal difficulty?
They they were scheduled for an induction abortion after usually being determined to be carrying a handicapped baby of
Yeah.
some sort.
Well, in
It
the
wasn't that
case
they
Right.
go ahead.
In the case of a baby born without a brain, that baby dies quite soon afterwards. Is that
Right.
not correct?
Yes, it's true.
But in the case of Down syndrome, the baby is born alive,
Yes.
and so this is what people say this doesn't happen, but you're saying in the case of in your hospital, a baby with Down syndrome that the parents wanted to abort because that's what they're told they should do, and that's what the society tells them they should do. The baby is born alive and then put, I think it was in your experience, put in a utility room. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pseudo compassion that these doctors oftentimes I hear really kind of coerce these pregnant moms into aborting. There's less chance of a malpractice lawsuit if a baby is aborted before a handicapped baby is born. It's cheaper for insurance companies as well. And so I think there's a rationale for wanting to take care of this as well as pseudo compassion.
For example, a Down syndrome baby that would obviously live a healthy life if was born, and is a healthy fetus actually. You witnessed, say for example, Down syndrome babies being born, or healthy-ish babies being born, and then put in utility rooms to die. These weren't babies that were going to die seconds after being born. This was a lengthy process.
Sometimes no, sometimes not, and sometimes the babies were completely healthy. Um, for instance, there was one mom who was carrying a 23-weeker and wasn't going to be able to complete her pregnancy to term. So, because she was at this hospital that offered choices, it was asked of her, do you want to deliver a baby in distress? Hold on to your pregnancy for a couple more days. Let us give you a med to try and strengthen the baby's lungs, give the baby a fighting chance, or do you want to abort? She wanted to abort. She delivered a healthy little girl. If she had wanted everything done for her baby, a team of 4 specialists would have been sent over from the neonatal unit to care for this baby. But because this baby wasn't wanted, the only people present was my nurse friend and an OBGYN resident. And this little girl, incredibly, her APGAR scores improved between 1 and 5 minutes, meaning she began showing signs of thriving all by herself. But nothing was done for her. She was just kept in the department and rocked for 2.5 hours until she passed away. So my experience at Christ Hospital was that about 1/4 to 1/3 of these babies survived the abortion, some living as few as a few minutes to one living almost as long as an 8-hour shift. Christ Hospital never denied that what it was doing and what I said was going on wasn't true. In fact, the hospital chaplain wrote a letter to the Chicago Sun-Times, letter to the editor, saying that this method of abortion sometimes resulted in babies being aborted. He said about 20% of the time, and they lived for a few minutes. Of course, as I said, I know that was tweaking facts, but they admitted that this is what happened.
What happened when you went public then?
Well, I'm going to back up and tell what happened that made me go public. I didn't have to participate in these abortions, but one night a nursing coworker was taking a little baby who'd been aborted because he had Down syndrome to the soiled utility room to die, which is where babies went if parents didn't want to hold the babies, which was most often the case, or nurses didn't have time to hold the babies that night. And this is a room that has dirty linens in it, dirty instruments, a urinal to dump bedpans in. And when my nurse friend told me that she was taking this little child to die in the soiled utility room, I couldn't bear the thought of his dying alone. And so I cradled and rocked him for the 45 minutes that he lived. He was between 21 and 22 weeks old. He was about the size of my hand. And he didn't move very much because he was using all of his energy attempting to breathe. And I remember toward the end of his life, I couldn't tell if he was alive or not unless I held him up against the light to see if I could see his heart beating through his chest wall because their skin is so thin at that age. And he lived for 45 minutes. Nothing could have been done. Even if resuscitation had been attempted, his lungs just weren't mature enough. And after he was pronounced dead, I folded his little arms across his chest, tied them together with a little string, and took him to the morgue where we took all of our dead patients. So Christ Hospital knew exactly who it was aborting. And it was after that experience that I first tried to privately appeal to the hospital to stop, wrote a letter to the religious leaders of the hospital, and they said they weren't going to stop. Asked private individuals and organizations to appeal, such as Cardinal Francis George of Chicago, Dr. C. Everett Koop, also the former Surgeon General under President Reagan, wrote to the hospital, but appeals didn't help. And so it was only then that we went public.
And what happened when you went public?
Immediately, the news spread like wildfire. First of all, because this was kind of the first time that this method of abortion had been discussed publicly,
Mm-hmm.
and also because hospital where these abortions were being committed was named Christ Hospital,
Yes.
Yes.
which was it was just inflammatory to
Yeah.
the Christian world. And so before I knew it, the story was being spread from one end to the other of the country, and I was being interviewed everywhere. The story was in New York Times, Chicago Tribune, and really exploded right away.
And when what was was there an investigation into your claims by the hospital, by the authorities, by the police? What was the upshot of it?
Yes, I'll give you the long version. You can shorten it. The Republican Attorney General was a wimp. The Attorney General of Illinois requested the Illinois Department of Public Health to investigate Christ Hospital, and they determined that there might be problems with their charting, but there was nothing that they were doing that was illegal.
Hmm.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Nothing. So this is not illegal.
So how do you feel when you see ABC Fact Check and Kamala and other Democrats say with certainty that babies are not killed and allowed to die by neglect after being born alive after abortions? What do you feel when you see that?
I just well, I get mad. Of course, I know this is absolutely not true. There are many states that have no restrictions on abortion, even up until birth, and even after birth. They don't prosecute or penalize physicians for leaving babies or to die. But also, you'd mentioned in the intro that the Born Alive Infants Protection Act passed in 2002 under President Bush. That was just a 3-sentence bill that defined what it means to be born alive in the United States. Any baby born, no matter what reason for being born, that showed signs of life, color, breathing, heart beating, was considered a constitutionally protected
Mm-mm.
person. And that's how far abortion had brought us. But there were no penalties to the Born Alive Act. Fast forward to within the last few years, there has been a bill introduced called the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which does provide for penalties and prosecution of an abortionist and even people in the room who know what's going on. But it has failed in the House and it has failed in the Senate, or not even been allowed to be brought up
Mm-hmm.
for a vote, because they know what's going on.
So we did a recent Twitter thread where we explored this issue. You mentioned Governor. We mentioned Governor Ralph Northam and others and other instances of this. But one response we got, I just wanted to put it to you because it's an interesting one, and you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's worth us understanding the nuance of this. So somebody wrote and said, "My friend gave birth to a much wanted third child who was born without a brain. You ghouls would have put her in jail because she and her husband were allowed to hold him for the few brief hours of his life rather than subject him to painful and useless interventions. God help you." What would be your response to that attack?
Was she kind of indicating that like the hospital like was somehow should have been forced to keep this baby alive?
No, I think she's accusing us of saying that what we're advocating for is that a child with encephalitis, I think it's called, born without a brain, would
Right.
have huge medical interventions, be subject to huge medical interventions.
The Born Alive Infants Protection Act and medical procedure all across the country says that all babies should be treated alike. And so if you have a baby who's born with no brain, for instance, the hospital is not going to provide Frankensteinian care to that baby, whether that baby is wanted or not wanted. So that was just an incorrect assumption.
Yeah.
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 So other commenters have just basically called us flat out lying, saying we're just lying. I mean, the most common comment we got was this never happens, despite the evidence we have. I mean, we have the transcript from the Gosnell trial. We have even
Governor Northam.
Governor Northam.
Saying
We
it.
have Tim Walz's Minnesota, where they actually record the number of babies born alive every year. But the most frequent comment is this never happens. How do you feel when you see people and those comments on our Twitter thread? This never happens.
Well, people are ignorant about the facts of abortion, if they would go stand outside any late term abortion clinic, they would see very pregnant mothers going in for abortions. Secondarily, even the Washington Post published an article within the last couple of years that said that late term abortions do happen, and they most often happen for the same reasons as early abortions.
Yes.
In other words, not only do late term abortions happen, but they don't just happen for all the reasons that are usually listed by supporters of abortion for these late term abortions being committed. They'll say that it's for rare defects or for life of the mother, which is also wrong, because doctors everywhere will try to save the life of a
Yeah.
mother, in the
Yeah.
event of pregnancy, being causing her life concerning difficulties.
As you say, these abortions, they happen, these late term abortions, and this idea that they don't happen is wrong. They happen, and they happen for the same reasons that early term abortions happen, which are basically social reasons. People don't want to carry the baby to term. They don't want to give birth to a baby. They want to kill their baby. And that's why abortions happen. And that's why late term abortions happen. The idea that it's some kind of rare illness or disease or syndrome is actually something that the fact checkers should fact check, and they will find that it's not true.
As a matter of fact, I think abortions where babies are surviving are happening more now than ever because of the do-it-yourself abortions, where moms they don't have to prove how far pregnant they are. They may not know, they may not care. And if they abort late in pregnancy, even if they use the mifeprex and it doesn't kill the baby, but they use a misoprostol, then they will deliver. And you can read anecdotally on websites and that babies are aborted alive in the toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's happening now more than ever.
Yeah.
Well, Jill, thank you very much for coming on the show.
We really appreciate it.
Really appreciate on all what you did and what you're continuing to do. And it's
And
by the way,
Jill,
it's,
you
uh,
too.
thank you. It's just about bringing the truth out. Actually, it's
Yeah.
not about pushing an agenda. And this is what our Twitter thread is, and what we're trying to say is this. ABC. If you're going to fact check, stop fact concealing. Fact
Right.
check. These are the facts. We have the receipts. It's there. It's happening. So thank you, Jill, for all you do, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jill.
You're welcome. And thanks that you guys have really latched onto this topic. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. And now we want to talk to you about some American geniuses. Yes. So you may have seen something about the MacArthur Genius Grants.
The MacArthur Genius Grants, by the way, which I just found out on NPR, they want to make bold solutions to big problems.
So this is almost $1 million awarded to 22 people every year who apparently want bold solutions to big problems. Now, the organization, the MacArthur Foundation, of course, the money was made by an ultra-conservative man who died, I think, in 1979.
They made the money, and it was insurance company.
Yes, but he was ultra-conservative. And, of course, he had a couple of rich kids who are ultra-liberal because that's the way the world is. And he was John MacArthur. His son Roderick took control of the board and has basically funded ultra radical left wing causes, including many abortion causes since then. So let's look at what qualifies as a genius in America in 2024.
So interesting. The first kind of interesting statistic that comes out is that 16 of the 22 recipients are people of color. That's, by the way, 73% of the recipients. What we should have done was got what percentage of the population in the United States is a person of color. But I don't think it's 73%. So it's, but by the way, I actually have no problem what color you are. Just be brilliant. So let's see how brilliant these people are.
Yes.
And who they are. And we've just got a few of them here. So do you want to do the first one there, Phelim?
Rua, are you here? Sorry for I'm mispronouncing your
Nothing
name.
wrong now with having a funny name.
Yes.
Phelim.
Yes. Ruha, I'm apologizing if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Ruha, R-U-H-A, Benjamin, professor of Black Studies at Princeton.
Black Studies.
Focuses on the intersection of race, justice, and technology. Developed the, quote, new Jim Code, close quotes, theory about how social media algorithms worsen racial oppression.
Technology is racist. That's fabulous. And by the way, what I'd love to know is, because I might go back to college one of these days, could I go and do white studies. Could I do a white studies course at Princeton? I wonder anyway, maybe. I wonder, are there Jewish studies, by the way? Are there?
Yes.
There are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good,
But
actually.
no, that's what Alan Dershowitz says. They're the centers of anti-Semitism because it's third-rate Jewish professors who can't get a job at any of the Israeli universities.
Oh, God.
So they come and teach radical left-wing anti-Israeli crap.
Okay, well done to Rua Benjamin.
Congratulations, Rua.
Congratulations.
And
Rua.
then you got
then we got Justin Vivian Bond, who is a transgender singer, transgender cabaret singer who uses by the way, and this is
new one on us,
new one on me now, who uses neo pronoun V, and then the pronoun. And when you meet Justin Vivian, you say the self. Is that so? In Ireland, by the way, they have a whole thing. They've been at it for years. Is that yourself there? So instead of saying is that yourself there, which is kind of an Irish thing, they say the self. The self.
So he's the V pronoun.
He uses the V pronoun, the self, and he's an LGBT activist.
That is a genius.
Shockingly.
It's a genius.
$800,000 worth.
Yes.
Then we have Wendy Red Star of Portland, Oregon, who is a visual artist engaging with archival materials in works that challenge colonial historical narratives.
That's all I want to know.
That's all you need to know, Phil.
Yeah. Then you got Jennifer L. Morgan of New York University, who is a historian, quote, deepening understanding of how the exploitation of enslaved women enabled the institutionalization of race-based slavery in early America and the Black Atlantic.
Where's the Black Atlantic film?
I do not know.
Okay, we need to look that one up. And also then we have Jason Reynolds. I just love
Can I just say Jennifer might be an okay historian, but when she's lumped in with these other people, she's probably not an okay historian, but when she's lumped in with all these other grifters.
I think when there's such a similarity of theme here, Phil,
yes.
I think we think that there may be a little problem. Jason Reynolds now, lovely, well done there, Jason. Well done, Jennifer, by the way, of Washington D.C. is a children's and young adult writer depicting the rich inner lives of kids of colour and ensuring that they see themselves and their communities in literature.
Yes.
And then we have Dorothy Roberts. Dorothy Roberts of the University of Pennsylvania is a legal scholar and public policy researcher who is exposing racial inequalities embedded in social service systems and uplifting the experience of people caught up in them.
Yes. Dorothy, would you ever think of investigating why people are in the social service system? And
in the first place.
Would there be a problem in a culture that condemns people to that? Would there be a problem in a welfare culture that is condemning people to lifelong, being in the social services system? And maybe you shouldn't be uplifting the experiences of people caught in them, but getting them out of the social services system. Would that not be a better?
But finally, I want to come to a recipient that really, this is how I came across this story in the first place. And I want to put big congratulations out there to Jericho Brown. I think he's a professor at Emory University. I know for a fact, though, he is at Emory University, but I do know for a fact that he is the head of creative writing at Emory.
Yes.
And he's a poet reflecting on contemporary culture and identity in works that combine formal experimentation and intense self-examination. Yeah. And I thought I'd recite a poem by Jericho Brown for you. And this is how we're going to come out of the program, actually.
Yes.
But it's
we always like to leave you with something to make you think,
to make you really think,
because we care.
So, and I mean, obviously, I like poetry, by the way, and I've studied poetry. I mean, Shakespeare, Tennyson, Wordsworth, W.B. Yeats,
Yeah.
And this is what he's joined this pantheon. And by the way, when I looked up more about Jericho, because I became kind of interested after I read this poem, he's also a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. Wow. Just to say.
Gee.
So here we go. Are you ready now? Okay. So just take a moment. I want everyone to take a moment.
And I just want people to just lose your colonial idea that poems have to rhyme, okay?
Yes. Stop with that now.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm going to start. And you should go on your phone, Phil, and try and find out the title of this poem. But I'm going to read the poem now.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
Oh, hold on. Let's find
the title of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't have a title.
Maybe there's no title to it. Oh, okay. I'm going to read it anyway. Here's the poem. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
My grandmother with her good hair, and her good white people, and her certified good slap across your mouth. Crack the beaten door to eat or sing, but do not speak evil. Dead, bad black woman I still love. She didn't know what we know. In America today, anyone can turn on a TV or look out a window to see several kinds of bird. In the air, while each face, watching, smiles and spits, cusses and sings a single anthem of blood. All is stained. She was ugly, I'm ugly, you're ugly too. No such thing as a good white people. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the podcast this week. And perhaps, I don't know, to me, this would inspire me to start writing poetry.
Yes.
Throw your hat in there at the old poetry game. Sure, why not? But well done to Jericho Brown, $800,000. Sure, God bless you.
Yes. Actually, if this has inspired you to write a poem, please write it. Post your poem in the comments section on YouTube. We'd love to read it. We could even read it out on next week's program.
Maybe.
And actually, I
do you feel like writing a poem now, Philip? No, you do. Go on ahead.
Actually, reading the poem is even better because you actually did him a lot of credit.
By reading it with such, because you see, I have the training. You see,
but the opening line is my grandmother with her good hair and her good white people, right? But the way he's written it is my grandmother with her good, and then the next line is
now,
hair.
Philip, that's not how you read poetry. Now, in fairness, now to Jericho, I'm actually speaking on behalf of Jericho now and saying that that's not right. That's not how you do it.
Am I being racist?
It's called run-on lines, Philip, and I thought you studied English literature at Queen's University in Belfast.
Well, did Tennyson ever have run-on lines?
Loads of them had the loads of them had them run-on lines. And by the way, Wordsworth did, because when you think about it, Tintern Abbey, we're not going to do that, but right now.
That's a long poem now.
These beauteous forms through a long absence have not been to me, as is a landscape to a blind man's eye. But oft in lonely rooms, and amid the din of town and cities, I have owed to them sensations sweet. It's kind of like that, isn't it? It's a lot like that.
I wandered lonely as a cloud.
Could you get it just right, Philip?
I wandered lonely as a cloud
that floats on high
over hill,
over
hill and dale.
If you want to do this, you got to know the poem, Philip.
And all at once I saw a crowd,
a host
of golden daffodils
beside the lake,
beneath the trees, fluttering
and dancing in the breeze. Okay, that's enough of that.
By the way, can I just say?
No, don't say anything about daffodils.
No.
Are you going to say something about daffodils?
You know what I'm going to say.
I know what he's going to say. So we have a marital difficulty here that we will share with you because we're close now. So my husband happens to have a number of flowers that are his favourites. One of them, by the way, is snowdrops. That was the first one you ever mentioned to me. But then he did mention that his other favourite flower is daffodils. And I then pointed out, so a lot of poetry has been written about daffodils. And the reason a lot of poetry has been written about daffodils is because daffodils have a very spectacularly short life. And they're spectacularly gorgeous for a minute. And then they die. And I mentioned this to my husband, which now he says has ruined daffodils for him forever. So I'm living with that.
Because I look at them now and think, but you're going to die soon. And by the way, Wordsworth's I wandered lonely as a cloud does not mention the short lifespan of daffodils.
I think we may need to revisit that. Fair
okay.
daffodil, we weep to see, you fade away so soon.
That's not it.
I know, but that's poetry about daffodils. Okay, enough. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you next week. Bye.
Hey!